Great Immigrants, and from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Rob Schmitz. The U.S. Coast Guard is investigating the cause of the catastrophic implosion that killed all 5 people on board the Titan submersible. Expert submariners say the tragedy could have been avoided by following the Navy's design principles. Steve Walsh with WHRO in Norfolk has a story.
In April 1963, one of the Navy's first nuclear submarines imploded off the New England coast, killing 129 people. Something caused the sub to sink beyond its rated depth until it was crushed under the pressure, says James Bryant, a retired submarine captain.
As the hull compresses, things groan and creak, things move around. You probably would have seen brackets holding up pipes breaking. They were very likely spraying of water.
Bryant is part of a group that is pressing the Navy to release the full investigation. 60 years after the accident, the cause is still heavily debated. During the early years of the Cold War, the Navy wanted to get nuclear subs into the fleet quickly. USS Thresher was fitted with new equipment, and the crew wasn't given enough time to train, he says.
They didn't really understand, have the experience operating a submarine, training on it when they went to sea. So whenever it happened, they were overcome.
Ronald Eugene Wolf.
The accident may have been caused by a faulty reactor design, a defective part, or crew error. Memorial services like the one held at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in New Hampshire in 2013 are still held at bases around the country.
Richard K. Fisher.
After the accident, the Navy ordered a complete overhaul of its sub-program. Now every part added to a submarine is thoroughly tested. Each sailor and each shipbuilder knows their role in safety. The Navy lost 16 submarines to accidents before the Thresher. Afterwards, the Navy lost only one, in 1968, and it hadn't been through the new SubSafe program. Even the memorials are part of the safety culture, says MIT professor Nancy Levison.
One of the biggest problems in SubSafe today is it's been so successful that they try and keep up the memory, because otherwise, if you haven't had an accident in your whole career, how do you keep people believing that you still can have one?
Levison has spent a career analyzing major disasters. NASA brought her in after the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated on re-entry in 2003. She took NASA engineers to see Navy subs being built. There, people in charge of safety can't be overruled by project managers in charge of deadlines and controlling costs. She's frustrated by comments from OceanGate founder Stockton Rush. Before his death in the Titan catastrophe, he had said in interviews that safety could stifle innovation. Levison said she's fought that argument her whole career.
You don't stifle innovation when someone tells you that your innovation is unsafe, but you use it anyway. Stupid engineering. That we want to stifle. Building things that we know are going to fail, what good is that?
The SubSafe culture is unique even in the Navy, and it's a hard ethos to duplicate, Levison said. OceanGate didn't hire former Navy submarine officers steeped in SubSafe, like Tom Shugart. He thinks the Titan tragedy could have been avoided.
The kind of questions when somebody saw that maintenance and design and construction wasn't being done the way it's done in the Navy, that maybe corners were being cut in the interest of innovation and whatnot, could have raised some red flags about how business is being done.
But he adds real problems have to be confronted before the boat dives, especially in the unforgiving world around the Titanic.
When you have an implosion that occurs at a depth that the vessel's supposed to be safely operated at, then yeah, there's not much you can do at that point.
It's something the Navy learned at great cost in 1963 with the USS Thresher, and works hard to remember. For NPR News, I'm Steve Walsh in Norfolk.
Fast fashion is fun for many people because it's a cheap way to keep up with the trends. But it comes at a heavy price for the environment. It turns out that fashion has become one of the most polluting industries in the world. But some innovators are looking for ways to change that. NPR's Iman Mahani has this report.
A lot of clothing that gets tossed out ends up in landfills or gets incinerated. And the problem's only gotten worse due to demand for cheap, trendy, and disposable clothing.
The production is growing, the consumption is growing, the amount of textile apparel disposed of every year is continue to grow.
That's Ting Chi, who chairs the Department of Apparel Merchandising, Design and Textiles at Washington State University. Entrepreneurs and designers are now looking to circular design to reduce the industry's impact on the environment.
When people started designing a product, they already think about the whole life cycle of the product.
That includes reusing materials to keep them from becoming waste. Amber Cycle in downtown LA is helping to turn discarded clothing into yarn.
We collect material from all different sorts of places, secondhand clothing stores, companies that have material that they are going to normally send to landfill.
Amber Cycle co-founder Shay Sethi says the clothing goes into a machine that breaks down the fabric.
Old clothing gets fed in. The process takes about 2 hours at about the temperature it takes to cook a pizza. And the output is a chip or a resin. So when you want to make a yarn, you buy this resin and you spin a yarn from it.
Sethi says he and Amber Cycle co-founder Moby Ahmed cooked up the idea when they were in college.
We just have the question, what happens to this bag of t-shirts that I'm ready to donate?
Sethi says the process goes beyond traditional recycling.
In order to achieve circularity for fashion, the process of converting an end-of-life garment to new yarns needs to be reimagined. In traditional recycling, the quality of the material is slightly reduced each time it's recycled. The world we want to live in is one in which that material does not lose any quality in that process of regenerating.
Sethi says, for now, Amber Cycle can only do this with polyester, but the company is looking to expand it to other materials. If you're thinking of sending in your own clothes, Sethi says, hold off.
Please do not send us any more stuff. We have too much stuff. But people somehow find our address and send us stuff.
Iman Ma'ani, NPR News, Los Angeles.
This is NPR News.
New research found that police drug busts could actually increase the number of overdoses and drug deaths in communities struggling with addiction.
By not having law enforcement, public health, behavioral health, harm reduction, all working together, we're going to end up with more people being harmed.
Public health experts say police must evolve their tactics to save lives. That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
All Things Considered this afternoon at 4 o'clock until 6:30 with Bill Earnhardt. A 91.7 WBXU. Mostly sunny today, warming up to 90. You might see a pop-up thunderstorm. Support for WBXU comes from the Original Mattress Factory. Employee-owned and operated, their mattresses and box springs are hand-built at their factory in Fairfield and sold directly to the customer at 9 Original Mattress showrooms located throughout the tri-state and Dayton. For store locations and to learn more, visit originalmattress.com. Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Nora Vaughn. President Biden meets the Swedish Prime Minister at the White House today. NPR's Deepa Shivaram reports they'll discuss Sweden's desire to join NATO.
The focus today is definitely going to be on NATO and trying to expedite this ongoing process of getting Sweden ratified. The White House says they'll be talking about Russia, relations with China, and climate change as well. And then on Sunday, the president's travels kick off. He's first headed to London, where he's meeting with King Charles, then that NATO summit, and then after that summit, Biden will end his trip in Finland, the newest NATO member, to meet with Nordic leaders.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian forces threatened the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. He's heard here through an interpreter.
Зараз від нашої розвідки ми маємо інформацію про те, що на даху.
We have information from our intelligence that on the roof of several power units of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the Russian military installed objects similar to explosives. The world sees that the only source of danger for the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is Russia itself and no one else.
The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency is in Japan to address safety concerns about the destroyed Fukushima nuclear power plant. The agency has approved a plan to release radioactive water into the ocean. The plant is running out of storage space for the water. This is NPR News.
Good morning. It's 8:32, 71 degrees in Cincinnati. This is 91.7 WVXU.
I'm Marianne Selesnik. Supporters of a proposed reproductive rights amendment plan to turn in petition signatures later today. State House correspondent Joe Ingles reports.
Ohioans United for Reproductive Rights will turn in petitions at the Ohio Secretary of State's office. Backers of the amendment to enshrine abortion rights into Ohio's Constitution need to turn in nearly 414,000 valid signatures by July 5th to put the issue before voters this November. They've been collecting signatures for months. But they're also fighting a proposal to raise the threshold for passing amendments from a simple majority to 60%. And if voters pass issue 1 in August, it would make it harder to pass future constitutional amendments by also requiring changes to petition gathering rules beginning in 2024. Joe Ingles at the Ohio Public Radio State House News Bureau.
Graduates of the Freestar Food Bank's logistics program are starting to see benefits. Wesley Walker started a new job at Grove Transportation Services in Hebron. The 10-week free course through Gateway Community and Technical College offers an opportunity for tri-state unemployed and underemployed adults to become trained in the growing logistics field.
It actually taught me how to be safe and use the guidelines and what to basically definitely with hazmats and stuff and what to put in trucks and what to take out of imports and exports. Basically dealing with, again, inventory.
Walker says he chose Grove because of the job security and the variety of freight from air and ship cargo. The 10-week course is held at the Freestar Food Bank's new Community Resource and Distribution Center in Riverside. Brett Kennedy won in his return to the majors as the Reds beat the Nationals 8-4 thanks to a big offensive showing. Kennedy struck out 3 and allowed 4 runs in his first major league game since 2018. Jonathan India homered twice, and Ellie De La Cruz went 4 for 5 with hits from both sides of the plate. Cincinnati's won 3 in a row and 6 of 7. They play the Nationals again tonight in the 3rd game of the 4-game series. Graham Ashcroft will pitch for the Reds. Mostly sunny with pop-up thunderstorms today. The high 90. It's 72.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from your part-time controller, specializing in nonprofit accounting. Your part-time controller helps nonprofit organizations with their accounting needs remotely or in person. More at yourparttimecontroller.com. And from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and Jarl and Pamela Moe, thanking the people who make public radio great every day, and also those who listen. This is NPR.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Rob Schmitz. President Biden is urging state and congressional leaders to address the gun violence epidemic after multiple shootings killed at least 15 people in the U.S. over the 4th of July holiday weekend. In Philadelphia, a gunman killed 5 people, including a teenager, and wounded 2 others, both children, in an apparent random attack Monday night. Here's Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney.
I am frustrated and outraged that mass shootings like this continue to happen in communities across the United States. This country needs to re-examine its conscience and find out how to get guns out of dangerous people's hands.
We're now joined by Philadelphia City Council member Kenyatta Johnson. He founded and chairs the council's Special Committee on Gun Violence Prevention. Good morning, Mr. Johnson.
Hey, good morning, Rob. How are you?
Pretty good. Let's start with Monday's shooting in your city. Do authorities know whether there was a possible motive for the attack?
To date, right now, we don't have a motive on the actual attack. The thing due to being a random attack, but even if that's the case, it's totally unacceptable. And there are several family members who are hurting from the loss of their loved ones, as well as the community and the city.
This is a tragic event. You know, Mayor Kenney says the country needs to get guns out of people's hands. While it waits for more action on the federal level, what can cities like Philadelphia do to reduce gun violence?
Well, as chair of the Special Committee on Gun Violence, we were taking a 3-pronged approach of focusing on prevention, intervention, and most importantly, enforcement. So making sure that we're investing in organizations we call boots on the ground that support and focus on young people who are carrying guns and providing them opportunities so they don't pick up guns in the first place. On the intervention side, finding ways and working with organizations that intervene and resolve conflicts around individuals so they don't pick up guns, to resolve conflicts in the first place. And last and most importantly, enforcement. Tracking down where illegal guns are coming from. We know there are no gun factories in the neighborhood here in Philadelphia, so where are these guns coming from? Focusing on and advocating for gun laws that will prevent individuals who have mental health issues from having guns in the first place. There are rumors that the individual involved in this particular shooting had some type of mental health issues, and so we want to focus on mental health as a key way to addressing gun violence and public health epidemic, and also making sure we're holding individuals accountable for picking up guns in the first place. And so we have to take a comprehensive approach, but there are way too many guns flooding the streets of Philadelphia as well as urban cities across this country.
Right. I mean, are there any cities or states in the U.S. that you feel have managed gun violence effectively? And is Philadelphia looking outwards to sort of learn from these places?
But there are some cities in California. Oakland has a program that we have been taking a look at, and this is a program that focuses on violence interrupters, individuals who are going out in the community who have a background in addressing issues of gun violence, maybe have experience of being involved in gun violence in their own lives, as one of the key ways in addressing gun violence amongst young people in neighborhoods, but also taking a public health approach as well. And so we have to make sure that we're addressing this with all hands on deck approach, and that's the only way we want to solve this issue of gun violence, not only in the city of Philadelphia, but also throughout the country.
That's Philadelphia City Council member Kenyatta Johnson. Mr. Johnson, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Rob. Take care.
Of many factors, but economic decline, gentrification, public safety, those are converging issues that many of these Chinatowns and Asian communities across the country face.
What are some of these specific economic issues that came up a lot at this conference that these communities seem to be experiencing really keenly right now?
Some of the economic challenges are, let's say, the plight of small businesses. Chinatowns are known for mom and pop shops and restaurants, groceries, the bakery salons, the things that make it a bustling commercial center. So many small businesses across the board are having challenges, and small businesses in Chinatown especially so, because of a confluence of factors, from public safety to the lack of access to government support. So the small businesses face challenges that are probably more acute than even the average small businesses, which are facing major problems as well.
There was a lot of anti-Asian sentiment, even violent attacks in Chinatowns early on in the pandemic, and many of those have continued. What's been the lasting impact of that kind of hate and discrimination on these neighborhoods?
I saw it for myself when I was in Vancouver, Chinatown last year. That was my first time in Vancouver, and I was pretty shocked at the vandalism that I saw. Shattered storefront windows, historic murals that were defaced. You're going to hesitate to take your family or your children if there's open drug use, or if people are shouting racial slurs at you, which did happen to me when I was there just in May. People will tend to stay away if they don't feel safe, and it's very hard for a small business owner to keep their stores open.
It sounds like the economic recovery that some restaurants and other parts of the service industry have seen has not landed so equally on Chinatowns.
Yes, and it will vary from place to place. Every city is different, but that seems to be a challenge. So let's say New York City, Chinatown, which is a large Chinatown. During the pandemic, there's lots of data to show that the Chinatown faced a disproportionate negative impact from the pandemic. Less foot traffic, and then there was also less government aid. ranging from small business loans, called PPP loans, to other kinds of government assistance, and fewer small businesses got those kinds of loans. So if you were already disproportionately challenged and then couldn't access those loans, you just fall deeper into the hole. But a good guess is that many of these small businesses have not recovered.
What do these businesses and community leaders from the various Chinatowns hope to accomplish with this new kind of coordination?
The conference was just a way for different kinds of advocates to share their experiences, to share lessons that could work, things that might be working, but also to seek support, because there is no silver bullet. It takes a lot more than individual advocates. You really need government support. Vancouver, Chinatown, a year ago when I was there, it just seemed like there wasn't much hope, and I thought, this is a dying community, which is just a terrible shame since it's a historic place. But less than a year later, there has been a lot of government support. There's been a lot more funding allocated to Vancouver, Chinatown, and advocates there feel hopeful. So that is a pretty inspirational message to others.
Amy Yee is a staff writer at Bloomberg's City Lab. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Office leader this weekend, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, brought in $82 million in its first 5 days, less than the studio was hoping for a more than $250 million film. There are still some big summer releases yet to come. You may have heard something about a Barbie movie. But the first half of the year has been a little meh for movie theaters. Stephanie Silverman is executive director of the Belcourt Theater in Nashville, Tennessee, which tends to have a slightly different marquee than the big theater chains. She sent us this dispatch.
You know, summer's shaping up really beautifully at the Belcourt. We actually had our second biggest opening weekend ever with Asteroid City a couple weekends ago, which was fabulous. And we're looking forward to lots more, but we're also seeing huge audiences, show up for Jaws. There's just nothing like that shark on the screen. To be honest, it was kind of a slow roll up to this point this year. Costs are going up, man, just across the board, and that's from people to popcorn. We have not dramatically raised ticket prices, although that stress of affordability versus making sure we're covering our costs is always an issue. All things worry me, but I'm also an optimist. So, there's a real conversation about movies and exhibition in theaters that absolutely moves the needle for us at the same time it's moving the needle for our big commercial colleagues. So, having Tom Cruise talk about his love of movie theaters just matters. This summer is just really rich with those conversations. Plus, we're not showing both of them, but the notion of a Barbie Oppenheimer double feature just catching fire is a blast. My 16-year-old is already planning Barbie first, Oppenheimer second, or Oppenheimer first, Barbie second. He and his friends are making a whole strategy to see both of these films on the same day. And I don't know that was intentional, but I love that the artists and the filmmakers themselves are just attaching themselves to it and celebrating it, because it makes a world of difference for audiences when they see that. Beyond that, finally the ground is being laid for a little bit of normalcy, and that's really about movie theaters. That's been the piece of the puzzle that has been weakened the most by the pandemic, and that we're beginning to see ramping up. They're working the hardest to get out some of the bigger title movies that are sort of the big ticket Cineplex kind of films, and then our world is a little bit second rung, but we're finally seeing energy now in both of those, which is exciting. We're still on the COVID journey, there's no doubt. Every time I feel like we're coming out of it, there are funny new wrinkles, but this does feel like a really great, exciting movie summer, and like what we haven't seen in even pre-COVID for a while. So that's really the best news for us.
That was Stephanie Silverman at the Belcourt Theater in Nashville, Tennessee. This final note on the way out today, like I mentioned early in the show, today the Fed released minutes from its June meeting with more details on what went into that decision to pause rate hikes. Basically, members of the Federal Open Market Committee want to let the impact of the rate hikes we've had so far settle in a bit before they decide when to raise rates again. And yes, I said when, not if. Basically, all the members of the FOMC said that additional rate increases this year would likely be, according to the minutes, appropriate. Stephanie was talking earlier about the extreme hot weather in some parts of the country. While it can put a strain on our bodies and productivity, it also strains electricity grids. People were particularly worried about that in Texas, which is currently sweltering under a heat wave. But according to Texas Monthly, the grid is holding up pretty well, thanks in large part to wind and solar energy, which on the hottest days last week produced 37% of the state's power needs. Our media production team includes Brian Allison, Jake Cherry, Drew Johnstad, Gary O'Keefe, Jeff Peters, Charles McClure, Juan Carlos Torado, and Becca Meyer. I'm Kimberly Adams. I'll return tomorrow.
Support for WVXU comes from the Charles H. Hager Foundation, enriching our lives in greater Cincinnati by making grants to nonprofit organizations, including Chetfield College, Sweet Cheeks Tiger Brand, and Cancer Family Care. More information at DaveFoundation.org.
Today from the Ohio Newsroom takes you around the state, connecting you to news and neighbors from all over Ohio.
This isn't just for Delphi residents, it's
especially for us here in Jackson County. There's a need.
I moved to Logan, Ohio, so here we are in Logan, Ohio.
Marshall County is actually where we're seeing the problem.
Listen during Morning Edition and All Things Considered on 91.7 WVXU. 91.7 WVXU Cincinnati and 88.5 WMUV Oxford. News from Cincinnati Public Radio and NPR.
The bulk of Mr. Beast's viewers are adolescents, young teenagers, people who are not necessarily extremely politically sophisticated, who are not particularly interested in joining in a culture war that aligns with electoral politics, and for whom pretty simple and straightforward charities are much more appealing than more explicitly political causes.
I'm Katrin Ballard. That's today on The Daily from the New York Times.
The Daily is supported by Made in Cookware.
Made in Cookware is crafted by chefs for chefs and designed for restaurants and home kitchens around the world. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com. Get the story firsthand with The Daily from the New York Times, hosted by Michael Barbaro and distributed by American Public Media. APM produces and distributes programs that inform and inspire.
This is Asian View from NHK World Japan. I'm Keiko Kitagawa. The UN's nuclear watchdog says Japan's plan to discharge treated and diluted water from a crippled nuclear plant into the ocean meets international safety standards. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi says the plant release at the Fukushima Daiichi facility would have a negligible impact on people and the environment.
The government decides to proceed with it, the IAEA will be permanently here, reviewing, monitoring, assessing this activity for decades.